Chiming in. This meeting will be recorded, and thank you for your presence. Wow, what a month, am I right? I generally hope that you and yours are safe and well following the frozen tundra that the frozed, I guess it was known as, that was our Louisiana last week. As always, I hope that you will not hesitate to reach out to me or any of your other LSU colleagues should you find yourself in an untenable situation for any reason. Admittedly, my home is rather crowded, a bit noisy, and always messy, but everyone is always welcome. Additionally, as you will see, we are still virtual. However, we remain optimistic that our virtual paradigm will shift to one of tangible reality before the year's end. Stay alert for updates on the March and April meetings. We are still learning to optimize our meetings in the virtual realm. So for the sake of completeness, I will ask all visitors to privately message Ms. Knoll for the record, and I will publicly announce the visitors at some stage during the meeting once we've received them all. We will take roll by means of Zoom sign-in. Please make sure that your virtual moniker is sufficiently analogous to your LSU persona for us to align the two. This is just to ensure an accurate record of attendance. I have a list of alternates and I will announce. For purposes of clarity, we do not have proxies based on our Constitution and bylaws. That means that one person cannot have more than one vote. So one person, one vote. To ensure that your college is properly represented, please be sure to have an alternate attend any meeting in your place should you be indisposed to any other number of obligations, of which there are admittedly many. All right, with that, I will announce the alternates. Matt Vangel for Anissa Basayev, Joan King for Karanush Ariana, William Dorlier for Roger Lane, Mandy Lopez for Kirk Ryan, Fred Agazadeh for Jerry Knapp, Charles Dizelle for Julia Lede, and Jonathan Snow for Peter Doran. Are there any other alternates? All right, hearing none, we've already covered the roll by means of Zoom login. The guests, please sign in. And we do have one public comment on the agenda. Professor Hogan, are you present?
Yes, I am.
All right, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, my name is Robbie Hogan. I am a professor and currently the chair of the Department of Political Science. And I wanted to share some information about what I believe are some severe problems being created by one of the Senate's own committees, the Integrative Learning Curriculum Committee, known as the ILC. I know something about the committee, given that I served on it for the past 3 years, representing humanities and social sciences. My term ended in December. As some of you are maybe aware, the ILC initiative was launched with the goal of improving the Board of Regents' required general education courses. The idea was to focus attention on central elements of learning, referred to as proficiencies. And this was to occur in entry-level courses that students could then build upon in subsequent courses. The integrative learning approach has laudable goals, and under the right circumstances, could indeed enhance student learning. Unfortunately, any benefits this approach can provide are being endangered by the system that the ILC committee has adopted for implementing it. The committee has embraced what can only be described as an overly complex process for proposing courses. On top of this, the committee is insisting on an overly complicated assessment system that demands detailed data using multiple dimensions based on rubrics that often cannot be aligned with course teaching strategies. Huge data compliance costs have been imposed, that exceed what are currently necessary and beyond what SACS requires. Without getting into the details of everything, the basic point is this. The ILC committee has created a dysfunctional system that disincentivizes programs from offering ILC courses and steers research faculty away from teaching them. More fundamentally, it's likely to impact student learning negatively, the opposite of what it's supposed to do. The ILC committee surveyed people who or faculty who have proposed courses and gotten them okayed by the committee. And its initial findings indicate that 68% of faculty respondents don't believe this will have a positive effect on their courses. 68% also don't think it will have a positive effect on student learning. I mean, think about what that means. 2/3 of the faculty predisposed to support this program don't think these changes will lead to positive results. Some very easy changes could simplify the process, and a lot of us have been trying to get the attention of the committee to deal with these issues. An ILC reform group has been created and organized. It includes 60 faculty from across the campus, from many different departments, many from HSS, but also those in chemistry, physics, art history, sociology. Members of the group have met on 2 separate occasions with the ILC committee. And it's pretty clear that when you talk to people across campus, the opposition to what they are doing is pretty widespread and expanding. Yet the ILC committee appears unreceptive to our concerns. They won't even respond to simple questions about why such a complex system is needed. I urge the Faculty Senate to exert its right to examine what the committee is doing, its oversight role. The ILC committee should be working to support the faculty's interest. To date, the committee has demonstrated an unwillingness to perform this basic representative function, being receptive to those who
Respectfully, your time is up. Thank you for those public comments.
Thank you for letting me talk.
Your voice is heard and your opinion is appreciated and welcome. Members of the ILC are on this call, additionally, are on this call, and additionally, it is recorded. I think VP Lee is on the call, who is the faculty liaison to the committee. Thank you again for your comment, and we'll make sure that the information is conveyed. All right, now for the president's reports. We thank Chairperson Dieng for his attendance at our January meeting. We hope to sustain a continuous line of communication between our LSU faculty and the Board of Supervisors. As you know, the faculty have requested a representative on the board for well over a decade. As I've shared before, we were recently informed that a change in the Louisiana state constitution is necessary to secure the spot for faculty on the board, at least a representative. No worries, the FSEC will be meeting with Chairperson Dieng to determine how to make this important change. Again, a reminder, there is a student representative on the board, currently the president of the Student Senate, Stone Cox. However, there has never in the history of LSU been a faculty representative on the board. More on that as it comes available. In case you missed it, our aging facilities tend to lack contemporary heating, cooling, and energy distribution capabilities or modern utilities. There's no need to share specific examples, but the number of structural failures continues to mount with each passing year with deferred maintenance. We all know the stories, wearing snow gear at our desks and alternatively using spritz bottles and mini fans to remain relatively lucid. Not to mention cables draped over our heads and light switch plates still festooned with stickers from the 1970s OPEC energy prices. Based on recent news, the Board of Supervisors recently elected to negotiate upgrades to our utilities energy infrastructure with 2 private companies, rather than the standard process of requesting bids for the work. The justification is that said negotiation will result in significant savings for the university. Also notable is that a nominee for a seat on the Board of Supervisors turned down the nomination and has a controlling position with one of the companies negotiating for said energy deal. I put forth that fiscal responsibility is certainly respected and no doubt warranted. However, it is equally important to ensure sustainable quality and healthy competition among contractors. The board is meeting today at 4:30 to discuss the strategy for utilities modernization initiative. At this point, we will hope for the best and we'll look forward to hearing more on the topic. Note, the next General Board of Supervisors meeting will be broadcast on March 5th. Next, the impact of the shutdown last week on our academic calendar. I received abundant communication that expressed concerns over the rationale for the shutdown and the potential consequences on faculty, students, and staff. Time is precious and no one wants to commit a month of Saturdays to catch up. This will interfere with numerous obligations, including research and scholarly work that cannot be scheduled during the weekday for any number of reasons. Several scenarios were contemplated as I understand it, and in the end, the makeup days were distributed between previously scheduled weekday breaks and Saturdays. Midterm grades were also moved forward by 1 week. Understandably, the disruption is inconvenient and challenging for all. Be sure to communicate to students any syllabus changes, as many have already done, and work with your college to resolve scheduling challenges. The start of 2021 has been a little bit rocky. Let's hope for a smoother going ahead. Next, COVID. The governor announced last week that beginning Monday, yesterday, people that are newly eligible for COVID vaccinations include teachers and support staff working on site in K-12 schools and daycares, all pregnant persons, non-emergency medical transportation providers and staff, and persons 55 to 64 years of age with one or more pre-existing health conditions defined by the CDC. Notably, LSU faculty and staff were once again non-existent people in the eyes of our Louisiana government. This came as a bit of a shock to many who have never failed to suit up and show up to educate our students, further our research for the benefit of mankind, and keep our buildings clean and in some cases standing. The provost sent out a message on Friday on this topic, so it seems evident that our administration is keenly aware of the lackluster prioritization of our LSU community and governmental cognition. Sad news. During our weather-related shutdown, there were reports and social media broadcasts of what apparently were LSU students maiming the Indian mounds by climbing atop them and then sliding down the surface with whatever they could sit on, including a boat of some sort. The surface damage to the mounds is horrendous. The structural damage has yet to be determined. And the question arises as to what does this say about our efforts as a university to respect and embrace the distinct history and cultures that comprise the fabric of our community. Personally, I hope that I speak on behalf of our faculty that we are appalled by this behavior, do not support or endorse the destruction of our LSU historical landmarks, and hold those who deface the Indian mounds accountable. The FSCC discussed this with the provost yesterday and called for better signage, protection of the mounds, and enforcement of their protection, in addition to more prominent recognition of their importance to our LSU. Next, at our January meeting, Professor Emily Elliott presented the COACH, Collaboration on Academic Careers in Higher Education program, funded by the National Science Foundation. The survey on which the program will center was launched, and everyone should, as I understand it, received a link in your email. It's absolutely imperative that as many people participate as possible. I know that surveys are a misery. I often equate them to my personal albatross, the Grok articles. Sorry, it's a personal thing. However, all voices matter. Change cannot and should not be driven by a few, most vocal, though those voices are appreciated too. Everyone has a personal experience, a distinct history, and important perspective. Your participation will be genuinely appreciated. Please reach out and encourage your colleagues to participate as well. The more representative the feedback, the stronger the motivation and accurate the efforts to improve faculty satisfaction and success on our campus. Many have expressed confusion, consternation, and palpable frustration over the software approval process. That is, software must be approved through an administrative office prior to approval by procurement when being purchased for desktop, laboratory, and/or classroom use. This is intended to ensure that accessibility and information security and data protection standards are met. Good news on that front. The forms are now electronic versus paper. The number of questions reduced from a whopping 50 to about 20 maximum. And approved acquisition requests are now PDFs that can be easily submitted with the procurement request without the need for printing, signing, scanning, or a sundry of numerous other activities that consume an important part of each day. This information was shared in a broadcast email. It comes as a welcome relief to all of us that have come up against the pitiless paper process for software acquisition at our LSU. Our thanks, sincere thanks to Information Technology Services, the Digital Resource Committee, Procurement, and Accounts Payable. Another good note, despite some sinking foundations and crumbling facades in our Riverside empire, change is on the way. Mr. Greg LaCour, Director of Campus Planning, leads the Campus Planning Oversight Committee that meets about every 2 to 3 months. There are some big plans in the making, including some major construction, renovation, and landscaping. We'll hope to have Mr. LaCour or a representative share some of the innovative changes ahead at one of our upcoming Senate meetings. I admit that I am often remiss in thanking our ever-present, extremely hardworking, and currently off camera, Ms. Knoll. She fields hundreds of maybe 1,000 emails per week, provides direction on everything from navigating the local landscape to our LSU Workaday, and pretty much everything in between. She manages the standing committees like the true professional she is, and even manages to keep me on track despite my propensity to run amok at the slightest distraction. With her outstanding organization, committees are all populated and in the process of scheduling the first meeting. There is one committee, the Integrative Learning Committee, that requires additional nominations due to a slight increase in membership recently approved by the FSCC. Ms. Knoll will share the slide listing the required nominations during President McMillin's presentation, and then nominations will be accepted from the floor today or via email until the end of the week. Many, many thanks to those serving on the standing committees. Everyone is stretched to the thinnest of lines, and we are grateful for your service. All right, I want to circle back just a little bit and make it clear that I speak now from my personal perspective and do not intend to represent anyone at this juncture other than myself. To summarize, the Faculty Senate voted at our last meeting to allow the sponsors to withdraw the resolution titled Confronting Anti-Blackness by Ensuring Adequate Access to Anti-Racist Curricular Offer, after voting to send the resolution to committee. Many of you have reached out from the Senate and from the faculty in general, and from students as well, expressing sincere remorse and angst over the outcome. No one has expressed any intention to take a side or any anger or frustration toward any group or individual. Most are palpably disappointed, but committed to continuing our journey forward toward a genuinely equitable, diverse, and inclusive university. I have to say this from behind, or perhaps in front of, I'm not really sure, this screen. And that is that I'm proud of the conversations that we've had as a faculty senate and as a faculty. And I have every confidence that our work is only just begun. There's a long way to go, and only by continuing to push forward will things change. There is a particular quote that I've come to appreciate and embrace over the last few years by Maya Angelou. It is as follows: history, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. I know that we will continue facing both our history and our future courageously, and I applaud all of you for that. I have the greatest respect and admiration for all who dare to make a difference and who remain fierce for our LSU faculty, staff, and students. We can and we will institute the changes to ensure that all members of our LSU community are respected, supported, and appreciated. Success is the only option. All right, with that, I will thank you for your tireless dedication and unwavering persistence and positivity despite some tiresome and trying and rather uncomfortably cold times. And above all, thank you for your service to our LSU. There's bright days ahead. Surely, look, the sun's already shining. And with that, thank you for your service to our LSU once again. With that, I'll conclude my report and take any questions. And then I need to circle back and get a motion to accept the minutes. All right. Feel free to forward any questions that you might have to me via email, or you can message Ms. Knoll. Poor things over there flying the 747 again while I'm out here doing a tap dance on the tarmac. All right. So with that, barring any substantive changes to the minutes and accepting willingness to accept any minor spelling or attendance changes, do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Professor. Oh, all right, we've got two, a first and a second. Anyone opposed? All right, very good. So we've got a busy day ahead, and we will lead off with our fearless leader, Interim President Tom Galligan. And with that, I'll turn over the floor.
Thank you, President Lopez, and I'm not sure how fearless I am, but it sure is good to be with you. And I hope everybody does have their power and their water back, and that you're warming up. I appreciate everybody's patience, and I understand the inconvenience of making up those days as we're making them up, and so I thank you for that. I want to join Mandy and discussing the really disrespectful and I think unaware activity on the sacred space, the mounds during the shutdown. I agree with you 1000%, Mandy. We need better signage. We need to have something that visibly contains those spaces, and we need to have historical references and context so people understand that when they do what they did during the break, they're being really insensitive, and they really are on sacred space. When we saw it, we immediately called the police department. The police had asked students to leave. That as soon as the police would drive away, they would return, but they will continue to do so. So thank you for pointing that out. Vaccine distribution. On my other screen, I am looking at a slide that I got yesterday from the Board of Regents. LDH has updated their slides and their scale and their priorities, and we are back in tier 2. So we are now in phase 1B, tier 2, and what the slide says is who gets it next, and we're in the group. It's a big group. Judiciary personnel, essential government personnel, Homeland Security, National Guard, corrections officers, homeless shelters, higher education faculty and staff, clergy, food processing, veterinarians, postal personnel, public transit workers, and grocery store workers in no particular order. But we are on the list, and Mandy, you made a reference to the tarmac. We're now circling, and hopefully we will start seeing vaccine on campus soon. We have repeatedly requested it. We're in ongoing conversation, this is a positive development. So we will keep you updated as we learn more. And as you know, we are if vaccines come at the pace that we expect, we are planning to be back in person in the fall. This is a really good sign in terms of having that actually happen. So, but while I mean, I know I don't have to tell you this because you're great at this, but while we wait for vaccine, and even after we get vaccine, we got to keep doing the things we've been doing. We got to stay vigilant. We got to keep being a role model for everybody else, wearing our masks, washing our hands, and staying physically distant. If my friends Kina Arbuthnot and Jake Palmer were here, they would tell you that our on-campus numbers have been declining. Baton Rouge numbers have been declining. That's a good thing. So let's keep up the vigilance. We have centralized COVID testing in Coates Hall, and the National Guard is still here. I still encourage you to get tested early and often. Wastewater testing continues to be one of our most powerful tools in identifying where we need to test each week, if at all. And we now have introduced sentinel testing. As you know, we identify a part of the student body every 2 weeks, and we say, come on in and get tested. So we think all of that's helped. There's also now a COVID hotline. If you have COVID questions, call 225-427-1326. That's 225-427-1326 at any time at all. We're also really excited about the opening of our Student Success Help Desk in the Student Welcome Center to better assist students. The help desk is going to be open every weekday, and it can also be reached by phone or email. So spread the word about that. Please tell your colleagues, hold virtual office hours. If you have a remote class and there's a synchronous component, I would urge you to use that synchronous component, because I'm urging students to attend that synchronous component. When I was 18 years old and a first-year college student, I could not organize my life. If I had had the option to just watch class anytime I could, I wouldn't be standing in front of you right now. It was hard enough to get there when I was supposed to get there. I changed in law school, Ken, I promise. So please, I think it really will help them organize their lives if they know, hey, there's a synchronous class, it's at 9 o'clock on Monday. Obviously, you can make the decision, but we're urging students to attend those sessions if and when you have them. We also had a lot of pressure for advising appointments in the fall. So we've designated 25 new advising folks to assist students. And since November 1st, we've been able to serve nearly 25% more students with academic advising each week. For the fall and spring semesters combined, we've received over 23,000 progress reports that help identify students who need assistance. So I think that's a good thing. I want to echo what Mandy said and underline it about the coach survey. Please participate in that survey. It is your chance to have your voice heard, but even though your voice will be heard, we will not know who you are. We will not know your address, your email address, but please participate. It says it takes about 25 minutes. I think I did it today in 20. It will give us really, really good data and really, really good information. It's the first time we've ever done anything like this on our campus. And so based on your feedback, we really have the opportunity to improve the lives of our faculty colleagues and ourselves. So again, we're doing it in conjunction with Harvard. It's easy, self-explanatory. I know there are a lot of demands on your time. I know we get surveys all the time, but please, 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 please do this one. Let me shift gears. The legislative session is coming up once again. Our biggest priorities include a raise for faculty and staff. The Board of Regents we join the Board of Regents in requesting a 4% increase over 2 years. We want to get our faculty up to the SREB average. We haven't been there since 2008. You are earning currently 10.7% less than our peers in the SEC. And I'm really concerned about that. I'm concerned about it as a faculty member. I'm concerned about it as someone who recruits faculty members. And I'm concerned about it for someone who wants to retain y'all, because you're the best, you're the brightest, and you deserve those increases. So help us out. If you vote in Louisiana, let your representative, senator, let them know what you do. Let them know a little bit about what you've done over the last 11 months. So not only are we behind, but you have totally risen to the occasion and done fabulous things. So that's one of our highest priorities. Another one of our priorities is last year, this is a little inside baseball finance. Last year, in order to not cut higher education even more, the governor and the legislature took $100 million of CARES Act money and they put it into our budgets instead of cutting us that $100 million. They did cut us all of higher ed, almost 22 million, but without that CARES Act money, that cut would have been $122 million. So that's where we start. We've got to get the legislature to fill that hole. Now, filling that hole may take a combination of another I can't say stimulus package, another relief package from Congress and the president. And you know, the president is pushing for it and they're having conversation, because if there's state and federal, my phone just popped up. I think I'm dictating. If there's state and local money, then the governor and the legislature will have more flexibility and ability to fill that hole if we have that hole again. So that is a huge issue for us. And Mandy, again, I'm sounding like we're agreeing on things. Deferred maintenance is another, which of course we agree, but deferred maintenance is another huge issue for us. All of higher ed, $1.5 billion in deferred maintenance. LSU, about $1 billion in deferred maintenance. On our campus, over 600 million in deferred maintenance. So that's like, you know, the mold that we didn't take care of when we first saw it in our bathroom, and now we're consumed by it. Facilities wise, our #1 priority is a new science building. And if we build that building and the Huey P. Long project goes along, we will take care of a huge amount of that deferred maintenance. Okay, I'm switching to Title IX and sexual assault. I expect to receive the Husch-Blackwell report next week. We will release it to the community shortly after we receive it. We'll present it to the board and we will release it to the community. I would expect that will be towards the end of next week. We've already started to, we don't know what's in the report exactly, but we've already started to look at things that we can do to improve. We've contracted with STAR. They're going to begin working with us to make recommendations about our training. We've heard that our training and our educational processes need improvement. I agree with that. And so STAR will be working with us this year on that and other matters. Diversity, we had another roadmap, series of roadmap meetings to update us on the great progress that we have made. I'm excited about that. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail on it, but I will join Mandy once again in urging you all to keep the dialogue going. And the aim of keeping the dialogue going is that the dialogue will lead to action. And I get it, we're not always going to agree. We're certainly not always going to agree on the details. But if we keep talking and we keep working, we are going to make change. We are going to take the action that we need to make. And we really are going to have a better campus. The building naming committee, some of you are members, is also working. They're looking at the names on about 20 buildings on our campus. They're considering and coming to an extensive list of criteria for making their decisions, and they're doing a lot of historical research. We don't know when the final report will come, but when it comes, it'll ultimately go, the recommendations will ultimately go to the Board of Supervisors, which will have the ultimate decision. So as I wrap up, I say it every time, but I mean it every time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. 11 months ago, we all went home, but we didn't stop working. You kept working hard. I dare say it's been a whole lot harder than it would have been if we hadn't gone home. Then y'all came back. Mandy, like we were talking about the vaccine, you came back and you've done fabulous work. You've done fabulous research, you've done fabulous teaching, and you've done great work to fight the pandemic. So as always, my hat is off to you. And I took that coach survey because first and foremost, I am your colleague. I am a faculty member, and that is the most important title that I have. It's the only one that is in interim, and it's one that I love very, very much. So I will stop talking. I thank you very much. And I too will open up for any questions.
Are there any questions for President Galligan? Well, I don't see or hear any, but if we receive any, we'll pass them on to you, sir.
Thank you very, very much. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
All right, thank you, President Galligan. All right, next up, our own Vice President or Vice Provost, Matthew Lee, who will fill us in on all things OAA.
Good afternoon, President Lopez and everybody else. Good to see you. I specifically came to speak with you all today about our quest to complete our search for a student information system. You may remember a few years ago, we made good progress in terms of nailing down and discerning the background requirements for how to update our student information system. It was temporarily paused for a while, and now we're restarting the process to establish a new system to replace basically our outdated homegrown system that we've been using. I've been asked to lead this project along with our university registrar, the eminently capable Clay Benton. And of course, I'm working very closely hand in hand with our IT leadership, and you'll see that our CIO, Craig Woolley, is here with us today. We have formed a steering committee and a core project committee, and the work has begun. I'm happy to say that, as you all know, I'm a sociologist. I'm not a technical expert, but we're picking up the work actually from a very good starting place right now, because in prior phases of the project, the vast majority of the background work that really focused on identifying the specific requirements and technical needs was completed. So what we're doing right now is we are currently reviewing those requirements one last time, and we are starting to work through the procurement process with the procurement office to engage a competitive process that will yield proposals for us from various vendors in this space. The bottom line, I think, thumbnail thing that everybody needs to be aware of is that we're really looking to get away from having a system that has a high level of customization and getting into a system that has relies more on a high degree of configurability. There's a limited number of products that are out there for us, and none of them will meet all of our needs. And some of our student data related processes will likely have to change. But in the end, I think that we'll choose one of the products that are available, and any one of them should really democratize our access to the student data and enhance our efficiency with which we use it. So this is something that's much needed. It's very important. It's not terribly exciting compared to some of the other things that are going on campus, but it is very critical that we get it done. Applicants through the competitive process will be invited to provide demo presentations of their products for us in the coming months. And then we seek to basically wrap up the procurement phase at the beginning of the summer and start an implementation around July 1. And so the length of the implementation period really is going to depend on what product we end up going with. And either way, though, I think we expect it to finish either in spring of 2023 or the spring of 2024, depending on what product we end up going with. We have established a website. We'll make sure we get that out to you. That will provide relevant information to the campus community as we develop it. We, of course, seek to make this a fully transparent process and look forward to keep everybody involved and engaged in it. So just to summarize, basically, we're restarting the process to identify a new student information system. Most of the groundwork and background work, identifying about 1,100 different technical specifications, has already been taken care of, and we're in a confirmatory phase with that right now. And we're about to invite proposals from industry vendors, and then we're going to get a process in place to rate the systems and then move forward with our procurement process. So that's the student information system update.
All right, thank you, Vice Provost Lee. Are there any questions? Well, okay, and sorry, you think this will be in place and operational by when?
Well, so we seek to wrap up the procurement phase for the beginning of the summer, and then start it. We have a timeline laid out where we would like to start implementation July 1. Implementation takes a while. So depending on what product we go with and what all needs to be done, we're looking at either, I think, the spring of 2023 or the spring of 2024.
Okay, and will there be a transitional process? You may have remembered a few years back that we had a slightly nightmarish episode in which we were had the outstanding opportunity to learn about 7 different systems within a 1-month period or 1 semester. What steps will be taken to avoid that?
If I could rely on our CIO, Craig, to speak to that. He and I have talked about it, but I don't want to speak incorrectly about it. He might be able to speak a little bit more clearly about it than I can.
So thank you very much for letting me be here and talk to you. I am well aware of some of the pain points that have happened through the last implementation. And again, I think President Lopez does a very good job of relaying to me some of the concerns of the faculty and mistakes that were probably made in the past. That is also why we are giving ourselves and saying spring of 2023 or spring of 2024. What we don't want to do is rush people through the process if we're not ready. And so we want to make sure part of it depends on the vendor, but part of it depends on this has to be a more calm process and one that is more inclusive, and that our faculty, our staff, our advisors, everybody who's interacting with can be comfortable with the system. So I think that's very much in our minds as we go through this. And that was what was in our minds when we set some of the target dates, is to make sure if we're not ready by 2023, because there's not a comfort, we don't feel like faculty are trained, we don't feel like we don't have everything ready, we can go later. But it is an important piece to us, and we are well aware of the concerns. So, and that's why we want to come back here often, is getting feedback and making sure we're checking to see how we're doing. But that is definitely on our minds.
All right, and how comfortable are you that this system will seamlessly or relatively seamlessly integrate with our existing systems?
Yeah, that's a big part. Yeah, I think by going with some of the commercially available packages that are designed to do this, it definitely won't make it worse than what we've got now with trying to integrate with a 40-year-old mainframe. So I am confident that it will be just as easy, if not easier, to integrate our systems with this new system than what we've got now.
Very good. Will, we appreciate you both being here. Are there any questions from the Senate? All right, well, everyone's rather quiet today, but I'm sure I'll get some messages later and I'll surely pass them on to you. Thank you very much for coming to us today, coming before us today and sharing. And please do keep us posted. We're all looking forward to getting away from circa 1980.
Sure, of course. And of course, anybody who has questions about this, if you think about them later, feel free to email me. It's very simple, mlee@lsu.edu. And I'll happy to entertain your questions as they come along the way. Thank you.
Very good, thanks. All right, next up, Professor Theda Daniels-Race will introduce and update us on the School of Collaborative Academic Programs that she directs.
So it's Samba Dieng. It's the School of International. It's international office.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've screwed up. Oh, see, I have to be reined in. I'm sorry. Let me introduce properly the new Senior Internationalization Officer and Executive Director of International Programs, Samba Dieng. I'm very sorry, sir. Welcome.
No, Mandy, I don't have to go immediately. If you have somebody else who has to go, I'm totally
No,
fine with that too.
Ms. Knoll has to tighten, pull back on the reins now and then. I'm rushing ahead, so
Oh,
apologies.
Okay, yeah,
Please.
well, good job, by the way, for spelling my title the way you just did. It's a mouthful. I always say that. So, as Faculty Senate President Mendy just said, my name is Samba, and I am the Senior Internationalization Officer and Executive Director of International Programs. I don't believe I know any of you, so I would like to introduce myself very briefly. I am originally from Senegal. I came to the United States as an international student, attended the University of Nebraska for my undergraduate studies. To this day, many people, including LSU, ask me how I ended up at Nebraska. And I've been telling them that it's a story that I will share when they have time with us. I am coming from Lehigh University. So I served as the director of the Office of International Students and Scholars at Lehigh University, which is a highly selective private institution in the state of Pennsylvania. So I was overseeing immigration compliance, immigration rules, regulations, and things of that nature as it pertains to international students and scholars. When I met with Mandy about a couple of weeks ago, we talked about comprehensive internationalization. Obviously, that's why I was brought in here to the LSU community. LSU wants to take comprehensive internationalization very seriously. It wants to establish its international footprint, not only locally, but also internationally. And so I'll be heading the Office of International Programs, which is currently comprised of 5 different units, many of whom you already know, like, for example, APA, the Office of the Academic Programs Abroad, the Office of International Students and Scholars, which is mostly known as ISO, and then now the Partnerships Office here as well. So I'll be talking to you about comprehensive internationalization, and I just want to share just one slide here a little bit and then walk you through the process of how this is going to work for me, for the entire university over the next 3-4 years. Andy. All right. Okay. Okay, I assume everybody can see this slide. I borrowed this slide from ACE, the American Council on Education, which is based in Washington, D.C. ACE is essentially a research think tank. They do a lot of research in higher education, but they also do a lot of research in international education. And so one of the programs that they have is called the ACE Internationalization Lab. They have helped many universities in the US, colleges and universities, private and public, flagship institutions, and sometimes even IVs, in terms of establishing a international footprint, but also in terms of putting together a strategic plan for internationalization. And the ACE model is called the comprehensive internationalization. And they believe that in order for a university like LSU to claim the status of being a comprehensive internationalization, you have to have 6 pillars working very, very well for you. The first pillar is articulated institutional commitment. So this is essentially just about how universities are talking about internationalization and how internationalization appears in universities' strategic plans and mission statements. You can believe me when I say that when I was interviewing for the position here of SIO at LSU, I looked up the strategic plan, which you call Leading Louisiana Impacting the World Strategic Plan 2025. And right off the bat, I could see that the first sentence talked about serving a global purpose and solving global challenges. And that was enough for me. That already had convinced me that global engagement is an important value that is infused in this community. So this goes back to the articulated institutional commitment. So when I saw that in the strategic plan 2025, I knew that globalization was something that mattered a lot to LSU. We can also add, putting resources where your mouth is in terms of how universities perceive this work. We can add that to articulated institutional commitment. The second one is administrative leadership, structure, and staffing. And this is just about putting the right human resources in place to do this work on campus and throughout campus. The third one is curriculum, co-curriculum, and learning outcomes. This work is obviously all about student learning, and faculty are the linchpins of this work. So this is essentially about what is LSU doing in terms of internationalizing in its curriculum and making sure that the students graduate with the right skill sets that they need to live and thrive in a globalized world. The fourth pillar is faculty policies and practices. This one is essentially just about incentivizing faculty to do the work that they do in terms of engaging globally and then rewarding them for the work that they bring back to the university. The fifth pillar is student mobility. And when we talk about student mobility, of course, we're talking about outbound students, like how many students are we sending abroad, but we're also talking about inbound students, like international students that come to our campus. But this is not just about the transactional sort of process of sending, X number of students abroad and then having X number of students coming back to our campus. It's also about making sure that we have the right infrastructure in place for international students, for example, to be successful when they come to our university. The final pillar is collaboration and partnerships. This one, of course, is about transatlantic collaborations, like, for example, LSU working with international peers overseas, but it's also about collaborations within our own community and how we communicate with each other to do this work and to advance this work. The arrow that you see going across all the 6 pillars suggests that all of them are interconnected in some way, shape, or form. So what happens in one pillar or one area is essentially going to impact what happens in another. It's not by accident that curriculum, core curriculum, and learning outcomes, as well as faculty policies and practices, are at the center of this model. Because as I said earlier, faculty and student learning are the linchpins of this work. So students cannot learn without faculty, and internationalization is not going to happen without faculty. Faculty are absolutely the linchpins of this work. You can see at the bottom there, this is the definition that ACE came up with in terms of comprehensive internationalization. ACE is saying that comprehensive internationalization is a strategic, coordinated process that seeks to align and integrate policies, programs, and initiatives to position colleges and universities as more globally oriented and internationally connected. So this is, again, that whole connection and that whole alignment and integration. That's really what it's about. I've always liked to say that 35 years from now, maybe LSU wouldn't even have an international programs office because the university is going to be so connected internationally. Things are going to be so coordinated. Communication is going to align so well that perhaps we wouldn't even need somebody like myself or international programs to help us in this work. So I'm going to stop here for now and see if anybody has any questions for me.
Well, thank you very much, SIO Dieng. Are there any questions?
I'll simply say I look forward to meeting you, sir. I think we have some similar interests, and I'll be speaking about collaborative efforts, but both professionally and personally, international interaction is very near and dear to my heart. So I hope to meet you soon. I'll make an appointment.
Likewise, thank you.
I guess it would be good to know, do you have some sort of timeline for launching your program? And
I do. And thankfully, I don't know if Stacy's on this call, and I'm not sure if Matt is still on the call, but they were gracious enough to help us, get the process through very quickly. I believe Stacy has already, sent out, the commitment to ACE, the American Council of Education, letting them know that we are going to be participating in the ACE Lab, which is the strategic planning process that has to begin. And the timeline goes as follows. In August, we are going to be sending out, announcements to mainly colleges, especially deans, asking them to identify people in their colleges who they believe would be willing to serve as members of the strategic planning committee. So that's how it begins. But then the process itself is going to take about 18 months. So until we graduate, but then when we graduate with a strategic plan for comprehensive internationalization that will guide us in terms of moving this work forward.
okay, well, very good. I think there are a number of people wanting to know how to sign up. I think there's there's a bunch of hands and people are wanting to know, hey, how do I get in on, how do I get on this train? So other than messaging through the deans, is there any other outreach or opportunity for people to participate?
Well, usually strategic planning committees for internationalization are limited to what, 15 to 18 people. You know, LSU has a lot of colleges already. And so, for example, I can see how each of the 12 colleges will need to have, you know, one representative. And so I'm going to begin with them at first, you know, the colleges, because as I said earlier, this work is all about, you know, it's all about faculty and student learning, and faculty are obviously the linchpins of this work. So I have to start with the deans, which I've stressed to them, articulated very much earlier to all the deans. So I'm going to start with them, and then I'm going to let them sort of guide the process in terms of who should be appointed.
Yes, I think I was referring to the next step, right? After you've got your strategic planning, do you know how, will this be open to everyone, or will it?
Yeah, well,
specific?
it's going to depend on how it's going to depend on how we sort of tally up the work. Some universities like to look at the models that I just shared, like the 6 models, and then sort of divide it up that way, maybe like having 6 committees. Some universities like to look at the things that are most pressing to them. Like, for example, a university may say recruiting more international students is more pressing to us, or a university may say we want to send more students abroad. So the committees will be formed depending on the urgency of sort of issues that we have here on campus. So I don't know that yet, Mandy. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we very much appreciate you being here. Welcome. I apologize for my over-enthusiastic reading of the agenda, which is a personal flaw. So we thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Give you
Thank
our
you.
warmest welcome, and we'll hope to hear from you soon.
You will. I can promise you that you will. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. All right, and now take 2. Professor Theda Daniels-Race will introduce us to and update us on the School of Collaborative Academic Programs that she directs. Action. I think you have to unmute.
Yes, there we go. Thank you, President Lopez. If I may share screen, I think it's set up for that. Let's see. And I actually have a timer here. I know I have 10 minutes, so I will start my timer when I get my first slide, if that's all right. Can everyone see? There we are. All right. Okay, well, good afternoon, fellow senators. I'm frankly honored to be here and to discuss this in front of you. Those of you, some of you are already familiar, some of you, this may be new, but I am Theda Daniels-Race. I'm a professor in electrical and computer engineering from the College of Engineering. And I've had the honor of being asked to serve as the program director for this new School of Collaborative Academic Programs. And I will say quickly, if the school actually predates me, I came on board as director this past summer, but the inception and the approval of the school with regard to the Board of Regents and the Provost submission for the school took place, I believe, October of 2019. So let me tell you a little bit about what's happened since then, or at least since the summer. So to begin, our administration, our setup in terms of infrastructure is as follows. We have our executive leadership in the form of 3 deans, Deans Blanchard, Lawrence, and Peterson. And of course, the late Dean Martin Johnson, a dear friend who will be missed, was one of our inaugural deans. His influence is certainly as an advocate and champion for the school as part of its formation as we go forward. I myself, as mentioned, served as service program director, and Erica Hawthorne, who some of you may know from the Office of Academic Affairs, is our communications specialist. Erica is also a Tiger, an alum. She received her degree right here from the Paula Manship School. And then finally, rounding it all out, and really I'd say most importantly, as you'll see in I hope in a few moments, is our Faculty Policy Committee. And this is comprised of representatives from each of the schools and colleges across the institution. This is I would say, our gatekeeper, our brain trust, our quality preservation and so forth organization to keep the school on track, and most of all, to represent its faculty governance and how it moves forward. Now, the vision and mission, I'm sure you all have seen these sorts of terms before. I won't read them verbatim, but let me just make the point that these are not platitudes. These are indeed actual goals and the actual vision and mission that we look forward to achieving. So in that regard, as with any of the colleges and schools, we seek to give our undergraduate and graduate students, of course, the opportunity for the highest levels of achievement that they will find in terms of coming to an LSU for an LSU education. This school is multidisciplinary, multi-college. It actually is a school established in service to the existing schools and colleges, if you will. This will be or is a degree granting unit, but we only work if, what works for and with you all, with our current colleges and schools. The mission, of course, again, as we all work to provide deep integration across our disciplinary boundaries and to bring in the synergy of the various schools and colleges. That last bullet point there with regard to exceptional and complex problems, which we all seek to do solve every day. I've been using the example of COVID. If you think about it, as horrible, of course, as this disease has been, it has brought together of course, the medical community, the scientific community, the engineers, but also the journalists and the writers and the sociologists and the artists as well. Across the board, people addressing, documenting, historians and so forth, this particular, frankly, plague. But I do hope going forward, we will have certainly more positive problems to address. But again, multidisciplinary and across our various colleges. Now, since the summer, let me give you just a quick look at some of the things that we have achieved and that we are looking towards going forward upon. So to begin with, understand the unique paradigm of the school. And this was very important because the words interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary are oftentimes thrown around somewhat randomly, but this is a place that I mentioned earlier, a faculty-driven entity, a degree-granting unit that is in service to the existing schools and colleges to bring together those opportunities, as I call it, with a square peg and fit in the round hole. Ideas that may not fit or be suited for one specific college or school, but in such a collaborative effort would be appropriate. Understanding existing documentation. This has to do with, quite frankly, that which very wisely the Faculty Policy Committee that was in place since its inception and the Provost put together as to what this school would be. And likewise, what is going on, frankly, nationally. I can tell you, I can be blunt at times about my home state. I'm a native Louisianan. And I can tell you, growing up at times, I was concerned that it seems that sometimes what we had here was not as much as what other states have. I know now at LSU, we're certainly ahead of the game, but in this school, we are also not only with, but ahead of the curve in terms of what's happening nationally. Collaborative and supportive relationships. I'll address more of this in a moment, but this is extremely important and is the core of the existence and success of this enterprise. Communications and outreach, hopefully what I'm doing part of today, and with some of you actually on the Faculty Policy Committee are faculty senators, so you know about that. New degree opportunities. This again is what we are about, looking to give a spot in a place where new degrees, ideas, things that some of you have maybe wanted to do for years and now have an opportunity or place for that to happen. And then meetings such as today with the Faculty Senate. But I will say here, this last point of policies and procedures, as again, speaking of new degrees, as a number of you know, sometimes getting that sort of thing on board is a long and arduous process. And the deans and I worked very diligently, many, many hours this summer to attempt to streamline that process so that really faculty can do what we do best, which is come up with the new ideas, which is the scholarship, which is our leadership and teaching and guidance of students. And the administrative stuff, so to speak, can now be taken care of in a place so that the faculty can do what we do best, the administrative part can be taken care of, come together in terms of a school that serves the institution. Going forward, phase 2, we are now in this semester. Phase 1, I would liken to midsummer to first semester or last fall, and phase 2 now in our current semester as we look at new degree programs, new program certificates that some of you have already brought forward in terms of plans and ideas. Okay, now supportive collaborative relationships. I'm just going to give you here a smattering of some of the units and organizations with whom we've spoken. If I've missed anyone, please get in touch. I certainly was not intentional. We're still meeting and talking to more folks, but meeting with all the deans, and many of them have been gracious enough to introduce me to their chairs and directors and to present about the school there. CCK, phenomenal. Our Center for Collaborative Knowledge. We have colleagues right there and ready, as I call it, a brain trust that I hope the school will be able to support, and in turn, they will be able to help and support us in developing this new enterprise for the university. LSU Online, extremely enthusiastic and ready for any ideas and things that you all may have going forward that may involve an online component. Likewise, the professional schools have reached out and we've met with them. UCFY and UCAC, as some of you may all may be familiar, in terms of advising our students, will serve as an entity in that regard. And then likewise, ORED, the LSU Foundation, and of course, Office of Institutional Effectiveness to keep us on track. I can tell you that as I speak this very week, and even last week with all the issues of last week, folks at the foundation and ORED, for example, are doing research right now specifically designed to assist with supporting the school and looking at what we need in the state and beyond. And then most importantly, faculty, all of us, because none of this works if we are not behind this. And so far, I'd say so far so good in that regard, but I hope that will continue and grow. Now, new degree opportunities. If you remember nothing else of what I say, collaboration. And as my colleague mentioned just before me, this is the key in all aspects of the word. That's oftentimes more, it's maybe easier said than done, but this is the heart of what we are about. Faculty driven. Again, I mean that sincerely as a faculty member myself. And this, I have to mention, is not only professionally important to me, but personally important. My husband and I are second time around LSU parents. Our youngest is a freshman here. And regardless of whether our son has anything to do with this or not, it is important to me that this work. Because, you know, like a lot of you, I'm paying tuition for a kid too. So faculty driven to do what's best for our students and for the scholarship that we purport to offer. And then administratively, as I mentioned, in fact, it was Dean Johnson who used the term SCAP is going to do the heavy lifting to allow the faculty the freedom what the faculty does best. And then finally, a win-win scenario. Again, that's not just a platitude here. This is a case where, as you all know, oftentimes, I know I do, we get siloed in our areas, in our colleges. I get siloed in my laboratory at times. But this is something where instead of it being the push me, pull me of, you know, one give and the other takes or vice versa, now both ends of the spectrum, if you will, reaching across the aisle, we have policies and procedures in place so that we will have a win-win scenario in terms of those colleges involved. Lastly, let me give you in my last 32 seconds, as I see on the timer, just a very quick overview. Details of this, I'm happy to go over with anyone. We have a pre-proposal process. This is on our website, which is can be found at www.lsu.edu/SCAP or SCAP. The pre-proposal, by the way, 2 pages, right? I don't know if you all are like I am, but you don't want to go through months and weeks of working on something and find out you didn't dot that I or cross that T. So a 2-page pre-proposal just to get the ideas up there. Phase 2, everything in that pre-proposal feeds directly into the formation of the full proposal. So no effort is wasted. You don't spend time, you know, filling out paperwork or discussing pedagogy and pie in the sky, and then it have nothing to do with what actually needs to go into phase 2. And phase 3, the routing and review, again, working through our faculty policy committee and our deans. And finally, the program implementation as would be done as we go beyond the university into the Board of Regents and so forth. Last slide or so here. Going forward, as I mentioned, our website, again, www.lsu.edu/SCAP. Are working with Stratcom to get the word out and to do so appropriately at the highest of standards as we expect of all the colleges and schools. And here, just again, a quick glance at some of the entities with whom we've spoken. So with that, I will stop and certainly happy to take any questions. By the way, what you've seen is just an overview. There, as they say, the devil's in the details, but we have definitely worked to tame that devil since this summer. And I think you all, I hope those of you already working with us and those to work to come will enjoy what the school will be able to offer our students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Daniels-Reyes. Excellent presentation. Sounds very exciting. Anybody have any questions?
Has anybody come to you yet with new ideas for programs?
Yes, indeed. We have right now going through our system, in fact, our first pre-proposal, which I'm very proud to say we really started, I guess you can say we really started this semester, but last semester we got our first pre-proposal, went through our system of our policy and procedures and review and got a thumbs up. So now those faculty members who come from actually the College of Science, Engineering, Business, and Human Sciences and Education, I think are the primary faculty from those particular units, are working on a full proposal right now. So yes, something is going through, and other groups have actually already approached us and are getting the information needed to start their pre-proposal process.
Very good. Professor Regis?
Thank you. I was just wondering whether the college will be able to support team-taught courses across the disciplines.
That is, quite frankly, a good question, which I am going to, if I may, kick to one of our deans. I know Dean Blanchard and I believe Dean Lawrence are here. And because really these decisions are, you know, the final deciding factors are the deans of the school. So if I may.
Sure, Theda, I'll step in here. So Helen, one of the aspects of SCAP is that it requires us to have agreements between colleges and between all the different units that are involved in these programs. So anything such as team teaching or anything like that, that would be part of that agreement. So it's, you know, that's just part of the process.
Okay, additional questions? All right, well, my question is, how might someone find out what is already, you know, the programs that are already in existence? And are there any concerns about potential overlap or any limitations to programs that may have a little bit of overlap?
Believe it or not, that is actually part of our process, because it's very important. As a matter of fact, I'm looking here at the document from Provost Haney that went to the Board of Regents in the inception of the school. And it is very important, even with PS 45 that we already have in place, to make sure that we're not just, you know, as you say, overlapping or copycatting any. We want things that are new, things that people have maybe wanted to do for some time, but just didn't have quite the place and the means to put it. So in our process, which I, sorry, because of the time limitation, couldn't show you the details of that, but we do have in our process of review, making sure that there is not just an overlap or repeat. We're not trying to, you know, rob Peter to pay Paul. We want to attract new students. And we also want to help the colleges and the departments increase those student credit hours of the courses that they do have. But any information as to what exists, and if there's any issue with that, please get a hold of me. We have an email address, scap@lsu.edu. However, our program manager is on maternity leave right now. And so I would just ask you to please direct anything to me, which would be, I think it's TD Race for Theda Daniels Race, tdrace@lsu.edu. Or as I've always told everybody, I'm really easy to find. You can say, there's a Black person who is a professor in the College of Engineering. And I think there are two, and one's a woman. So so just contact and say, where's the African-American professor in engineering? And, you know, that's me. So if you don't remember the email address, you can give me a holler and check that way.
All right, well, we'll find you one way or another, I suspect. Thank you for the numerous options. Are there any other questions or thoughts? Well, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I'm very excited about this. I've got some ideas of my own, so hopefully I'll be reaching out to you. I know we've discussed things like this or collaborations in the past, and I'm excited for the opportunity. So again, thank you very much. If we receive any questions, we'll be sure to pass them on to you.
Thank you kindly. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Next up, and I think I'm still on track, reading from the proper script. Unfortunately, during the conundrum that was last week, we had a slight breakdown in communication, and a few of us were reading from different pages of the same script. So I apologize for the slight hiccup on our schedule, but anyway, here we are. And Professor McMillin, emeritus and immediate past president, has agreed to go over, kind of give a sort of a bird's eye view of faculty governance and trying to delve into a little bit the current standing committees and clear up some confusion that has sort of just, what I want to say, has kind of been articulated about what standing committees are, how they work, What are the expectations of them? And what are the current standing committees? So does that cover it in a nutshell, Professor McMillin?
Thank you, Professor and President Lopez, but the answer is no. You know that I'm not going to talk about anything that you want me to talk about. So thank you for allowing me to address this esteemed body. And it is a pleasure. As I was looking through the pictures, I know lots of you. Some of you don't want to admit that you know me, but here we go. I was asked to talk about the Integrative Learning Core Committee, and we'll get into that. But in order to understand some of the background of that committee, I thought it was useful, since we really haven't met in person. Gosh, seems like years now, doesn't it? I thought it would be useful to go back and review just briefly how we get to our committees and what the committees actually can do. So we have to start off with what is faculty governance here at LSU. And we're actually empowered by the Board of Supervisors. And you see on the screen that Susanna's put up that under Article X 10, academic staff of the bylaws, it defines the academic staff, and it states very specifically that the faculty of the university determine the educational policy of the university. So right away, some of you are saying, well, why do we have administrators then if we do it? And the answer is no, we determine the educational policy by developing it, but administration actually then implements it. So that's why we really like to think of faculty governance as a shared governance of the university with our administrators. The Board of Supervisors regulations then go a little bit further in detail, and they allow each campus to have a faculty council that's composed of the faculty that are on that campus. And they define faculty as any full-time faculty member with the rank of instructor or higher. So that would be instructor, associate, assistant, and full professors. The faculty council then is delegated to generally determine the educational policy. And they cite some specific things like approving courses and curricula and awarding degrees and lots of other things, but also general educational policy. In 1972 then, it was decided, because the university was growing sufficiently, that having a general meeting of all the faculty to determine educational policy was becoming a little bit unwieldy. And that's when the Faculty Senate was actually formulated and assumed the role of determining educational policy for the Faculty Council. And that's why our Constitution and bylaws are so specific on how members of the Faculty Senate are elected or selected, and the roles that they play, and what then we actually can and can't do. Next, Susanna. So our Constitution and bylaws, I think they're about 19 pages, but they're really give an organizational structure to the faculty and how we determine educational policy. I've already said that we have membership criterion determination, essentially one faculty senator for each 25 faculty members in a college. And that would mean that each college would have at least one faculty senator. And we do have one college that only has one faculty senator. It determines our meeting structure and what we can do at our meetings. Also provides for an executive committee that's composed of the past president, vice president, secretary, and 3 members at large. And then it also establishes standing committees. The standing committees are very important. They determine the educational policy on behalf of the Faculty Senate. As most of us have found out in this almost a year now, that one can have way too many Zoom meetings because you don't have to move from your office chair or desk. You just sit and click on a button and there you are. And so we probably could go back to that aspect of a more democratic system, but most of us probably wouldn't participate with attendance any better than some of our students in our classes. And so in that regard, the standing committees then act on behalf of the faculty senate and are empowered through their charges for the specific educational policy sections that we are actually responsible for as faculty. In the process of then doing that, the committees most have operating procedures that we've combined to a committee operating procedures manual that is posted on the Faculty Senate website. Next, Susanna. So our standing committees, most of you are familiar with some of them. You might not be familiar with all of them. Our Admission Standards and Honors Committee actually does determine things like graduation requirements, medal criteria, and all the things that we would associate with maintaining the standards of the university required of each of our students. The Benefits Advisory Committee, I'm an ex officio member of that as a member of the Executive Committee. That covers everything from retirement packages to health care to arrangements for substitute teaching, you name the benefits. And then I should probably mention that the list of 26 items that we have compiled that we could probably tackle, you can't make every one of those a priority. So some of the things that we're working on this next month at the meeting will become publicized by President Lopez after we meet. Budget Planning Advisory Committee works with our Budget and Planning Office in administration to look at priorities and those type things. We dissolved with our revised Constitution and bylaws that was passed last semester. We dissolved the Committee on Committees so that we could streamline the process of actually filling committee vacancies that occur each year. Some are elected, some are appointed, but we wanted to streamline that process. Courses and Curricular Committee, those of you who propose a new course are involved in the curricular planning of your department or school know that very well. And Theda has done a very good job at explaining that we try to streamline that, but we also want to maintain a level of equity and standardization, and the Courses and Curriculum Committee serves as the university level for that. We instituted a new Faculty Senate Committee this year, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, that matches the DEI roadmap that some of you and some of us serve on, and that will be working very closely with Dr. Rivera's office, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We changed the name and the function, so we actually dissolved the Educational Policy Committee, which had been performed by the Faculty Senate Executive Committee for a number of years, which meant that we got tied up with other things and probably didn't devote the amount of time needed. And instead, we've designed an Enrollment and Digital Education Committee that interfaces with enrollment management and also with our online and digital education sectors, so that we have some degree of faculty advisory capacity with those administrative offices. We, several years ago, changed the Faculty Grievance Committee into a Faculty Adjudication Committee, hoping that we could actually have more streamlining of that process and actually resolve some of the difficulties that come up in a more expeditious manner. Along with that, then, we have established a Faculty Appeals Board. the Faculty Appeals Board is designed to do really two functions. One is there are some administrative decisions that are made for which there is really not a policy that covers it. And so some of the decisions might be considered to be arbitrary. And so a faculty member would have the right and privilege of appealing to this Faculty Appeals Board, which would then work with academic affairs to determine an equitable and fair process, and also to provide the faculty member due process. In the case of non-reappointment for a tenure track but untenured professor, or I guess an instructor who would not be on a tenure track, then this Faculty Appeals Board would also be an appeals procedure after decisions are made at the administrative level. So this is a new committee that actually has not been functioning yet because we just implemented it last fall. The General Education Committee has been transformed into Integrative Learning Committee, and I'll cover that in a little bit more detail in a minute. One of the speakers we had earlier, our new Director of International Programs, we're hoping that our Internationalization Committee becomes reactivated and works very closely with his office on revitalizing some of our internationalization efforts. And we're all very aware at what the COVID epidemic has done to our international students and their ability to get visas and study abroad, as well as come here and study. So in that regard, hopefully one of these days, everything will mesh back together again. Library Committee is self-explanatory, very important, especially with our declining resources that we have available for our scholarly activities. LSU Press Committee, very active with the LSU Press and what books are selected for publication. And in progress, we have our Student Aid and Scholarship Committee. If you're interested in that, then they will be working again closely with enrollment management and with how scholarships are given out to our students. Next slide, Susanna. So the Integrative Learning Committee, the Learning Core Committee. I've just listed the charges, but a little bit of the history and background. We've been required by the Board of Regents to have general education courses for probably even longer than most of us can remember. And as one of the difficulties, the general education courses, we've not had a real highly structured mechanism for evaluating those courses and how then they fit with more advanced courses in a curricula. And so as part of the Strategic Plan 2025, it was decided, and some of you served on those subcommittees to help develop the strategic plan. So faculty, students, and staff and administrators, there were about several hundred participants in that whole planning process. So it wasn't an administrator sitting out saying what is going to make us look good. This was actually a plan that was designed under former Provost Kubek to help guide us into 2025 and beyond. So in 2017, it was designed to be an 8 to 10 year plan. Obviously, we're about halfway, a third to halfway through on that. But in that process, we wanted LSU students to be even better prepared than they had been to enter the world and to make a difference. And we're all proud of our alumni, at least most of them. And in that regard, we want our students to succeed once they leave us. We want to leave them as better individuals to face the world than when they entered LSU. And so in order to do that, it was decided to use integrated learning core strategies, and there are 7 or 8 of those to actually improve our general education, and then eventually to have those skills, whether it's critical thinking, whether it's language, whether it's logic determinations. We wanted those skills then to be transferred up into the higher level courses. Now, some of you are saying, well, I already do that. Well, of course we do. We may not have those specific names, but in most cases, we try to make the students to be higher level thinking individuals. And most of us don't just say, here's a test, pass it. If you memorize all the answers, then you've done your job. No, that's not what most of us think of as higher education. We just weren't able to codify it as well as we actually wanted. So I'm not going to read through those charges. They're posted on the committee website, but realistically, they interface with the Office of Academic Affairs. And in the meantime, it was determined that we needed an Office of Institutional Effectiveness. Is LSU actually an effective institution at educating every one of our students? And we know that we have better departments than others. And we know that we have some courses that are more outstanding and better prepare our students than others. But the Office of Institutional Effectiveness then, and that's why we have the assessment criteria for each of our programs, is based upon us meeting the SACS requirements so we maintain accreditation. So the ILC then, through its charges, is empowered to fulfill those educational policies in regards to general education. Now, Professor Hogan, who provided us with the background on the public comments and the fact that there is dissension in how that committee operates, that's one of the reasons why I'm giving this presentation, is that the executive committee is working very closely with the ILC committee to address some of the concerns. One of the immediate things that has happened is that we have expanded the membership of the committee. Next two slides, if you would, Susanna, go to the last one. Next one, yes. And so in order to expand the committee and to address some of the concerns that the committee has, is we're seeking nominations from MDA, specifically from the theater group, science, natural science, and physical, life science and physical science, from humanities and social sciences, English, and social and behavioral sciences, so that we can gain a broader perspective of some of those areas that have a deeper concentration of the general ed or ILC courses. One of the things I don't want to stress is that even though the committee is autonomous, that is, they don't report directly to the faculty senate. They are a faculty senate committee. And so we, as the faculty senate, do have oversight of that committee. And in that regard, then when there are difficulties with the committee and they don't seem to be on the same track that faculty want them to be, then we all have to take a look at the committee and its charges and its functioning and determine what do we want that committee to actually do. One of the things, again, that we need to remember is that each of the courses that we teach, that's not our course. That is a university course that's been approved at the department or school level, approved at the college level, and has final approval through the Faculty Senate Courses and Curriculum Committee, which works with the registrar's office to get it published in the general catalog, and works with academic affairs and student affairs to make sure that every student understands what the requirements are. And so in that regard, those courses are university courses. Our faculty senate committees represent the entire university faculty. And so we try very diligently to make sure that all areas are represented. We can't have all English professors on the University Press Committee, for example, because they're not the only ones who publish in the University Press. So in that regard, we try very diligently, and Dr. Lopez has been very frustrated at times when we don't have enough volunteers, or when we request individuals to serve and they decline. We all know that we're all busy, but faculty governance depends upon those faculty standing committees. And so if you're not participating and would like to, well, we will welcome you with open arms. When there's a vacancy, we will be having selections and elections for some of the committees in the upcoming months for this next academic year. At this point in time, though, I'd be willing to address any questions. As I said, specifically for the ILC committee, we're expanding it to address some of the concerns. The FSAC, the executive committee, is working with the committee leadership to determine what actually are SAC's requirements and where we possibly can streamline the process of approval. But realistically, I don't like making reports or doing assessments any better than most of you. I don't relish giving exams and then having to grade them, but that's a part of the process of us determining, are we successful? Are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? Or are we accountable? And so in that regard, we're trying to maintain a balance between the ILC in approving courses that students want to take, and then maintaining the standards that we have so that we meet our SACS accreditation. So with that, I will end, because we still have other business, and take any quick questions that you might have.
Okay, yes, I think everyone could see the nominations. Thank you first, Professor McMillin, for that overview and explanation. Hopefully, well, I'm quite certain that that will clear up some of the misunderstanding about what faculty senate committees are. You can certainly read the charges in the faculty senate. You can find the operating procedures also, or sorry, in the Constitution and bylaws, and then you can find the operating procedures online as well. So we do have 2 resolutions to go over. So there, let me see. There was a question about how long has the Internationalization Committee been deactivated? Unfortunately, some of the committees were not very active over the last few years for any number of reasons. However, no committees have been deactivated other than those that Professor McMillin just identified. The International Committee is in fact activated and will be meeting shortly. We also were kind of in a transition period with the SIOD, and so we'll be making that connection here in the upcoming weeks. I think the next question was, how is committee membership determined? I think that was, I assume, referring to the ILC. It is appointed. So for a point, however, this is by no means a monarchy or any other sort of controlled sort of state. What we do in the executive committee is reach out and request nominations from colleges and from the faculty senators. So we have several arms of outreach. And then the Faculty Senate Executive Committee, if they are appointed positions, as they are in this case, we will vote and appoint them. All right. Was there any other questions? Who should we send nominations to? And I think Ms. Knoll has answered that. Okay. Any other quick questions?
Yes, the question was, do nominations for the ILC, do they have to be faculty senators? And the answer is no.
Oh, yep, there they are. Okay, no. All right. Well, thank you again, Professor McMillin, for that overview. I think we're trying to read from the same script. I think we ended up in the same place. So thank you very, very much. All right, next up, resolution, finally Senate resolution 21-01, formation of an ad hoc committee to develop a comprehensive framework for open access publishing at LSU. Professor Hochman, I believe, is, there she is, and she will read the resolution.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. I'm here as the chair of the library committee, but I believe Senin Chen is here as well as senator, and Tracy was able to join. Dean Wilder is here, Stanley Wilder, and Louis Kuiper-Rushing. And if you have questions or comments, you can ask all. Anyway, so let me share the resolution with you. Formation of ad hoc committee to develop a comprehensive framework for open access publishing at LSU. Sponsored by the Faculty Senate Library Advisory Committee. Whereas LSU is, according to its mission statement, committed to using its extensive resources to solve economic, environmental, and social challenges, and whereas, according to the Strategic Plan 2025, LSU aspires to be a catalyst for transformation, a force for good that changes lives and makes a significant positive impact on the world around us. And whereas the federal memorandum increasing access to results of federally funded scientific research stipulates that government-funded research be made available to and useful for the public, industry, and the scientific community alike, resulting in the requirement of federal funding agency to make research findings available through open access platforms. And whereas the Coalition S, a corporation of leading European research institutions and organizations, under the auspices of the European Commission and the European Research Council, pledges in their Plan S, with effect from 2021, all scholarly publications on the results from research funded by public or private grants provided by national, regional, or international research councils and funding bodies must be published in open access journals on open access platforms or made immediately available through open access repositories without embargo. And whereas the current COVID-19 pandemic demonstrates with unprecedented urgency for the need for open access science, showing that it is unethical to bar potentially life-saving research findings and data behind paywalls, and that instead new findings must be made immediately available, not just to the scientific community, but also to the larger public, as people, governments, and healthcare workers in every part of the world are in dire need of evidence-based and scientifically proven information to protect themselves and others from a formerly unknown and in many cases deadly disease. And whereas for-profit publishing corporations such as Elsevier or Springer have in recent years driven up the subscription costs for scientific journals to the point where even well-funded research libraries struggle to pay, and individual readers are strongly deterred by annual costs of up to $20,000 per journal. And whereas journal subscriptions constitute by far the biggest item in the budget of any research library, and steep annual inflation adjustments, 5% at LSU up to 6% nationwide, rapidly exacerbate the strains libraries already struggle with, as library budgets around the country are, for the most part, flat or diminishing. And whereas many publishers have made open access publishing available on the condition that authors pay article processing charges, or APCs, in the case of Elsevier in the range of $150 to $5,900 per article. And whereas APCs are not necessarily and rarely in full covered by research grants, and whereas experts warn that APCs create an unwarranted burden for individual researchers, noting that for graduate students trying to publish 2 articles in 1 year, the cost can easily amount to more than a quarter of their annual income. And whereas the Chronicle of Higher Education reports that some open access journals have gone so far as to require copies of personal bank statements from graduate students before even considering an APC fee reduction for them. And whereas a comprehensive study by the Max Planck Society concludes that a large-scale transformation of the current corpus of scientific subscription journals to an open access business model is possible at no additional cost to research institutions if in a wide-spanning international effort, the money currently locked into journal subscription system were to be withdrawn and repurposed for open access publishing services. And whereas the Max Planck Society modeled how research institutions can use transformative agreements and journal subscriptions such that subscription fees to journals grant affiliated researchers not just access to the content, but also coverage of the APCs for publications in these open access journals. And whereas the LSU Library was able to procure in 2020 a transformative agreement with the American Chemistry Society, under which the library's journal subscription automatically covers 28 APCs for LSU researchers. And whereas the raw map that tracks open access policies around the world lists 79 research institutions in the United States and 834 worldwide that already have implemented open access policies. Among them, peer institutions to LSU, such as the University of Florida, the University of Kansas, Kansas State University, or the University of Kentucky, and similar large state universities, such as Oregon State University or Penn State University. And whereas open access policies encourage members of the respective research institutions to seek out open access publication forums, define which standards the institution wishes to support with respect to principles and practices of open access publishing agreements, provide guidelines to authors in identifying and avoiding predatory open access publishing entities, enable researchers to make informed decisions about their open access publishing options, and generally serve as institutional roadmaps in a changing publishing landscape. And whereas the LSU Library's Open Access Author Fund, which normally supports roughly 20 to 25 faculty members, staff members, or graduate students every year with up to $1,500 to cover APCs of publications in fully open access peer-reviewed journals, has already seen a substantial increase in requests this year. And whereas LSU faculty already serve in editorial roles on open access journals for preeminent publishers, including PLOS, PRJ, Frontiers, and Hindawi, and can attest that open access scholarly publication is as rigorous and comprehensive as traditional publication models. And whereas open access publishing platforms often enable researchers to retain copyright on their publications and may offer to authors new metrics to measure the impact of their scholarships, which can serve as supporting evidence in tenure and promotion cases. Therefore, be it resolved, does LSU live up to its aspiration of being a catalyst for transformation that positively impacts the world around us by modeling a sustainable and innovative open access publishing policy, and thereby productively contributing to the global transformation of the publishing industry that is already well underway. And be it further resolved that an ad hoc committee be formed and charged with the task of drafting a comprehensive open access publishing policy that provides a robust regulatory and budgetary framework for open access publication by LSU faculty, staff, and students. And be it further resolved that this ad hoc committee consists of representatives from the Office of Finance and Administration, the Office of Research and Economic Development, the Faculty Senate Budget and Planning Committee, the Faculty Senate Library Advisory Committee, the administration of the LSU libraries, and the Faculty Senate Executive Committee. And be it last resolved that the ad hoc committee closely collaborate with the Dean of the Library in identifying both short-term and long-term strategies for repurposing or redirecting existing funds to ensure that individual authors at LSU are never forced into subsidizing open access publication of their research with personal funds.
All right, thank you, Professor Hoffman. This resolution is already entered into discussion. So are there any questions or concerns or thoughts or other discussion on the resolution? All right, hearing none. I know it probably looks like I'm in slow motion or pausing, but I know from personal experience how hard it can be to get Zoom unmuted. All right, so hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to move this resolution forward to vote? All right, thank you. All right, yep, okay, we got that. All right, a first and a second and several thirds. All right, so we are going to go ahead and put the polling out. Please vote yes to pass the resolution or approve, no to fail the resolution, or abstain.
President Lopez, if I
Yep.
have a proxy, so how do I vote for the proxy as well?
Unfortunately, due to, well, a very long and sordid history, but we are considered a public body, and so public voting body, and so we cannot have proxies any longer, unfortunately. It requires an alternate.
Sorry, oh, okay.
Okay, well, majority, let's see, it looks like 42 in favor of the motion and 2 abstaining. So the motion passes. Thank you very much, Professor Hockman, or the resolution passes, my apologies. Thank you, Professor Hockman and the Library Committee. And we will get this moving on to I think, the Budget and Planning Committee. More soon. Thank you again very much. All right, moving on to our next resolution, which I think, yeah, there he is, Professor Tehran. All right, is here for a first reading of Faculty Senate Resolution 21-02, faculty endorsement of the Graduate Student Bill of Rights. Professor Tehran.
Yes, thank you, President Lopez. And I am happy to bring the Graduate Student Bill of Rights to the Faculty Senate for your review and hopefully endorsement. But I cannot take credit for the Bill of Rights, as all the heavy lifting was done by the Graduate Student Association prior to this. It so happens that the Graduate Student Association president is a very talented graduate student in political science with whom I have the pleasure of working, Kojo Poku Ajamang. And Kojo and I are working together to bring this to you and represent the graduate students. And at this point, I would like to invite Kojo just to provide some brief comments about the genesis and evolution of the Bill of Rights, to give us some context about the motivation and exactly what the graduate students are hoping to accomplish with the faculty's assistance. So Kojo?
Hello, everyone. I'm Kojo Poku-Ajamang. I'm the president of the Graduate Students Association, and the Graduate Students Bill of Rights. It's something we've been working on for a couple of years to provide some form of document that captures the rights graduates in LSU would enjoy. Because one thing we realized, the experience here in graduate school has been very different for graduate students based on what department they're in and what college they're in. And we tried to come up with a document that would sort of make the experience a bit more uniform, so that people, the graduate experience would be a bit more uniform across departments and for all graduate students. So we started working on this a couple of years ago. I was a graduate school senator at the time when this document was put together, and we went through a couple of edits and we took it to the Students' Senate, and it did pass in the fall of 2020. And the next step was to bring it to the Faculty Senate and get the support and approval, at least for the bill, and see what the Faculty Senate also thinks about it and how we can make it better, and then take it on to the next level to get it implemented for graduate students.
All right, thank you, Kojo. Yeah, so as Kojo said, essentially at this point, the graduate school will be the principal unit which will be charged with implementing the Bill of Rights. But we as the Faculty Senate want to provide some direction as to our support for this and directions that we would like the graduate school to implement. So at this point, what we're essentially looking for is both suggestions for the resolution, which expresses our endorsement of the Bill of Rights, and also potential suggestions for alterations or amendments to the Bill of Rights. I've already received some helpful comments from Professor McMillin on some areas that may require some slight revisions. And I would invite everyone to provide the same on the copy that was circulated in the past few emails from Susanna from the LSU Senate or the LSU Faculty Senate address. And that is the draft that was passed by the Student Senate in the fall. So that is the current state of the Bill of Rights. And again, we would welcome your comments and suggestions. And I would ask that if you have them, please do email those to me so I can record them faithfully and make those changes. So the resolution that we are being offered in combination with the Bill of Rights is as follows. Faculty endorsement of the Graduate Student Bill of Rights. Whereas graduate students are critical members of Louisiana State University who facilitate many of its core functions. And whereas graduate students occupy a unique role as students, scholars, and in some cases employees of LSU, which generates a similarly unique set of issues regarding their status at the university. And whereas the Graduate Student Association at LSU has drafted the Graduate Student Bill of Rights, which addresses many of these concerns, as well as graduate student responsibilities. And whereas this Bill of Rights was approved by the LSU Student Senate in the fall of 2020, and whereas the Graduate Student Association has brought this Bill of Rights to the Faculty Senate seeking its endorsement, and whereas the graduate school is currently undergoing a strategic planning initiative, which makes this a propitious time for proposing changes to the policies and practices governing the rights and responsibilities of graduate students, therefore be it resolved that the LSU Faculty Senate endorses the principles embodied within the Graduate Student Bill of Rights and recommends it be reviewed by the graduate school for the purpose of adoption into graduate school policy when practicable.
To move this to discussion.
Mandy,
You might have to ask.
can I ask a question, or how do I do this?
Sorry?
I'm Bob Newman. I don't know how to.
Okay, well, if you go to the chat function,
Okay.
we've sent out, Susanna sent out the documents. Right, so could I get a motion to move this resolution to discussion?
You got it?
Oh, yeah, got it. All right, and a second. All right, is there anyone opposed to moving this to discussion? We're having a few problems with our polling. All right, hearing none, it's formally moved to discussion. Now, to be clear, this is on the resolution itself, but this is a little complicated because it also involves passing or endorsing a specific document. So, as has been clearly and appropriately communicated, feedback and recommendations for the Bill of Rights is also part of the process. So it is now formally entered into discussion. Any suggestions, recommendations, major or minor? Yes, Professor Daniels-Reyes.
Yeah, I do have a question. Is this will there be a second reading on this, a vote and that type of process? Is this just now open discussion in general, and then there'll be time possibly to circulate it amongst our constituents?
Yes, yes. Now is the time to put forth any recommended amendments or suggestions for anticipated passage at the next reading.
One other question. So in our seeing it at this point, and I know it had been circulated on email as well, will there be any other sort of faculty review? For example, I know in my department, I presume others, there's a director of graduate studies who may or may not be, I think in our case is, but in other cases may not be on the faculty senate. Between now and voting, I take it we would bring it before those individuals, and if would a possible, it may, for example, those individuals may want to examine it in some sort of committee or review on their own. because at this point, I feel a bit, I see what's there and I understand the information and don't have any particular qualms about it, but I think the people that would be most, maybe I would say knowledgeable, if you will, to comment on it or amend it, at least from my viewpoint in my college, might be directors of graduate studies, because they are most involved most directly with that body of students.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Yes, yes. We anticipate that the senators will take it back to those they represent and get feedback for the second reading as well. Absolutely.
and I do have one last question, if I may, for the colleague that brought it forward. So the so to speak end result, end game, and rationale for this is ultimately what? To put on paper to make sure that we understand and support the rights of the graduate students, or is there some other particular purpose of which I'm not aware?
No, that is correct. The graduate students are seeking to have some codification of the policies and practices, I think, within the graduate school, because they've encountered a large degree of heterogeneity across the departments. And as my understanding, based on discussions with the executive committee about exactly what our role is we as the faculty are seeking to express our opinion and provide direction to the graduate school, who will then be charged with implementing this in practice. So we are endorsing the final document, hopefully that will be acceptable to the faculty senate, which will then provide this information. But in terms of actually translating this into policy, that will largely be the domain of the graduate school.
Okay, Professor Newman, you have a question?
I do. It's a two-part question. Number one, this is a serious document here. We can't go forward with the resolution, in my view, unless we understand what's in that document. It's a long list of rights that are being created. And I'm talking partly to Dan here as well. A lot of those rights are vague, ill-defined, or not defined at all. And some of these are serious rights that we're creating for graduate students that we don't know what those rights mean. And it's hard to implement. Even the graduate school implement a set of rights that are not well defined. And if you create rights, if they think they have these rights, then it's an obligation for somebody to give them those rights. So we're obligated to do what? Many of those rights are vague, ill-defined, and then my question is, who's going to define these rights that are vague?
No, I think
the second part. Yeah. I'm sorry, Dan.
No, please go ahead with the second part, and then I'll respond.
So between now and the next meeting, when the second reading occurs, we're going to send questions to and comments and concerns, written concerns, not only to you, but would they be directed to the executive committee that would then disseminate these concerns to the faculty senators?
Well, we can certainly assist with that. So we're kind of caught because this is, a complex issue. Certainly, as far as the resolution goes, we would discuss and vote on any major amendments unless they're friendly amendments. When it comes to the Bill of Rights, however, you're right, is more of a faculty discussion and a faculty consensus. So we're more than happy as the executive committee to facilitate that. So if you want to send your comments to us, and that would be to the LSU Faculty Senate, then we can share them with Professor Tyrone and Kojo and work with them on the document.
Would they be shared with the other faculty senators?
Oh, sure, we can disseminate.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and if I may, just in response to that first comment, I agree. There are some things that I've looked at that in this document that I do think require some revision. There are other faculty with whom I have shared this in advance who have also raised some concerns. And so this is part of the reason why we're here is that, this is what the graduate students and the students passed themselves, but they are looking for our feedback on this before this progresses to the next step. So this is our opportunity as the faculty to seek some of that clarification, raise some of those concerns. There may be incompatibilities between what the graduate students are seeking with current policy. And so to identify what some of those areas are and really just kind of give this a fair and honest and thorough reading and coming up hopefully with a document that we as the faculty can endorse to send along.
Okay.
For clarification, the resolution actually is to endorse the principles in the Bill of Rights and not the actual Bill of Rights document, which will have to be approved by the Graduate Council and the graduate school. So that's the technicality, Bob, is that we're only going to endorse the principles that, yes, we need a student Bill of Rights and the major areas that are there, not the specific vaguarities that you're pointing out.
But the principles, many of the principles in my view and some of my colleagues are not defined. So it's hard for us to support principles that are not defined. This is a serious issue here when you go about creating rights.
I agree wholeheartedly, and that's why there will be a month of discussion period where anybody can send comments that they want.
I would also make one other recommendation, and I don't know if this is standard for these sorts of things, but maybe it's from having a spouse as an attorney, but with something of this nature, not go before university council either. I don't know if it would have to come from a faculty champion or a student, because when we're talking for the protection of the students as well as for the institution, when you're talking rights, you're also talking certain liabilities. And if that's going to be put on paper, as I have nothing against that being the case, but for the protection of all concerned, I think it should be reviewed by those who understand the verbiage when we discuss amendments, bills of rights, and that sort of thing, which I can tell you is not my expertise.
Yeah, there's several layers ahead of this. Again, this is specific to the faculty. We passed an undergraduate student bill of rights. You can see that resolution on the website previously. Absolutely agreed. It'll go to the Graduate Council and to the graduate school. This is at the faculty level. So, and this is an important discussion. We all agree, and feedback is requested and certainly warranted. So yes, all the points, absolutely agree. I think Professor Dozell has a question.
Oh, yes, thank you. Let me see. One example of one of the rights that seemed a little bit overbroad was in Part 1, Declaration of Rights, paragraph A, saying that university-wide departments, organizations, and activities should have at least one rep or grad student rep when necessary. Any additional committees and voting bodies that make decisions affecting grad students should also include at least one grad student member. And so any committees now, there's a lot of committees. For example, a PhD final exam committee, traditionally, that's just a bunch of professors. I've never seen any graduate students on those. And now this seems to say we have to have at least one grad student judging the PhD of, the PhD thesis of some graduate student. That's just one thing that is not to be taken lightly. I think if we don't even read that declaration out loud in front of the Senate and we just have to vote kind of in silence without knowing what we're voting for, each one of these things is a big debate. I don't know what other committees there might be that could be debatable. Also, at the end of the resolution, it thanks and it acknowledges the graduate students in other schools like Arizona State and University of California and places like that. And it's not clear to me whether at those other schools, was it just the graduate student associations in those schools who promulgated this Bill of Rights, or did the faculty senate in those other universities endorse the Bill of Rights, or did the upper administration in those universities promulgate it and issue it formally as a official university document, or what? Because as we've said, rights are normally legally enforceable. And so if you don't put that grad student on that PhD exam committee and he flunks, then does he have a lawsuit and things like that? So this is a can of worms, and I do think someone ought to read it out loud, just as a matter of procedure.
Okay, we could certainly do that. Would you prefer to have it read out loud now?
Well, it'll take a half an hour to read it out loud, but
Or
that's the
would
nature
you
of
be
a giant
okay
document.
with distributing it and collating the feedback and having a formal reading of the Bill of Rights at the next meeting after the revision?
I would suggest that individual faculty senators take a serious look at this and read it for themselves. I agree that it's a can of worms. Let me just give you one more example of something that I have no idea what it means. Graduate students have a right to representation at the campus, local, state, and national levels in order to advocate and advance the interest of graduate students. Tell me, if I have a right as a graduate student to go where? To a local what? To a state what? To a national what? And advocate what? And then who's going to provide? If they have a right to do this, that means, does the department that has a graduate student that would like to go to some national what, do we have to fund them? And if we don't fund them, that allows them to have this right or access this right, can they litigate? Can they file a suit? This is an open invitation when you establish rights for a graduate student or a group of graduate students to claim they've been denied these rights. Who litigates? Who defines what rights they've been denied? And then who litigates this? Can they go to the courts? So I would recommend that faculty senators do a serious job of reading this document.
All right, any other comments? Okay, well, we thank both Professor Tarang and Kojo for presenting this. I know it's been a bit of work to get it together. I think the faculty senators will provide helpful and meaningful comments. We'll certainly collate those and share them. I'm not sure how yet, but we will share them with all of the faculty senators, and we will also plan to share the revised document prior to the next meeting. The FSCC will meet with both Kojo and Professor Tarang during over the month, and we will plan on a formal reading at the next meeting prior to the vote. Did I capture it all? Okay, I believe that concludes our business for today. Thank you again for all of your service. Thank you for your attendance. Is there a motion to adjourn? All right, lots of motions. Have a good evening, everyone.